The collapse of America? Hardly. How about the collapse of China? Folks, The Economist, it's a UK magazine, has a great article called, and I'm going to put a link to it down below, entitled The Headwinds Return. And it's simply put, summarizing it, simply put, says that all of these emerging economies, like China, the BRICS, Brazil, India, China, and Russia, that while in the last, say, 10, 15 years, they've had some rapid growth, catching up to the US, catching up to richer Western nations, basically, it's petered out. It's over. China was growing at 10, 14% per year in GDP. Now it's down below 7. And this is just, finally, The Economist has put together some facts, some figures, some real numbers that you can research yourself. The article will be down below that you can read about it and see for yourself. This is just a repeat of, from the 80s and early 90s, the story of Japan. Japan during the late 80s, early 90s was going to take over the world. And what The Economist would say was, yes, the US economy is greater than Japan's, but the rate of growth of Japan means that in 10, 12 years, it's going to surpass the United States. But what happened? Part of Japan's rapid growth was in real estate, commercial real estate, and there was a real estate bubble. So it was a faux growth in the GDP. It was a fake bubble. It was a bubble. And this bubble collapsed. And for the last 20 years, Japan is basically flatlined. It's been, negative to zero growth for the last 20 years. Now they're surviving. They've got some, other issues. But look at China. We can say the same thing about China. China started out very, very low. People, come on, making $1 a day. Factory workers maybe make $200, $300 a month nowadays. So what is that? $3, $4 a day? I guess they're making more. There's still hundreds of millions of people making $1.25 a day in China. Parts of China to the west, northwest, and even southwest have not experienced any of the growth that is primarily happening in the southeast, in the Canton area, Beijing, of course, Shanghai, and in the Jiangdong provinces closer to Hong Kong. And the point is that while China has had some rapid growth, it's basically petered out. It's petering out. And while it is possible for there to be internal consumption, internal growth that's going to make China's economy grow faster or continue to grow, you have to take into other factors, just like Japan's factors were an aging population and lack of natural resources. Japan imports almost everything. It's an island nation. Almost the same thing is true about China. It has some natural resources, but it imports almost everything. It exports a lot of stuff, but it imports a lot of stuff too. Almost everything that it needs, that China needs, it has to import. So it's very dependent upon commodities from the outside. And we're seeing commodity prices drop. We're seeing the dollar getting stronger. If you people look, you're talking about the Fed printing paper and it's a bubble. But guess what? The Fed is tapering, so you should be happy. That means the Fed is producing less money. It's starting to contract, right? Interest rates, there's no reason for interest rates to go up rapidly. But the zero policy, the zero interest rate policy is definitely, its days are numbered. But there's no reason why it can't be around 0.25%, 0.5%, stay there for a couple more years. When it does go up, it's not going to shoot up to 5%, 6% anytime soon. It's just not conceivable that would happen, because the U.S. economy, while it is getting better, it's still sick. It's still pretty sick. And full economic potential of the United States has not been achieved. It's starting to get there. We're seeing a lot of, cylinders going strong in terms of energy production, some new manufacturing coming back to the United States, plastics, anything related to energy or cheap natural gas being a feedstock for plastics and stuff like that. Steel production, which uses a lot of energy, heat, right, is going up, and being very efficient, more efficient to make stuff in the U.S., especially if your customers are in the U.S. A lot of positives in the U.S. What's China got to say about that? They have all these ghost cities. I see a parallel with Japan. These ghost cities in China, just Google it. Just Google ghost cities China, and you'll see some pictures of these basically completed cities that are pretty much abandoned. Nobody lives there. That is a real estate bubble. It has to eventually collapse. What that means is either A, China stops building ghost cities, which means all those people involved in the construction of ghost cities are unemployed. Boom, they're unemployed. Or the second thing is that, hey, what happens to these ghost cities? Nobody buys them, nobody lives there. It's a ghost city. So that has to be taken into consideration. People aren't moving in there. For what? Well, I mean, what I'm saying? If they, people, Chinese government says, well, you can't build cities on demand. You have to plan them in advance. But we don't see people moving into these ghost cities. I don't see that. Final anecdotal thing for China. This may piss off some people, and I'm sorry, but it's the truth. I recently had a visitor from China in my house who complained that the Chinese food that we got for takeout needed more salt. So her husband, who is American, asked me for a salt shaker. I do not have a salt shaker in my house. I have a salt mill, right? Which you've got like a pepper mill, but it has sea salt or kosher salt, the rock salt, and you grind it with the grinder, right? Also, I can't read his name, Ching Chang Dao, was talking about, sent me a message here, and I'll try to include it if I can. Sent me a message about China's geographic challenges. I was responding to another video. He laughed at me because I pointed him to this Economist article and asked him to read it. He just laughed. And then I said, he said something about that. My point was that in order for China to become a world player again in Chinese mythology, it has to be united. The Chinese dragon has to be united, which means China has to retake Taiwan. That's not going to happen anytime soon. And he says, yeah, so we have to take over Taiwan. And I'm saying it's not going to happen. It's too late because look at The Economist. China's GDP is dropping in half from the peak, and it's going down. And there's no reason to believe that it's going to get back up there. So that I asked him, do you know how to use a salt mill? Have you seen one? He writes back, what? Question mark, question mark. And I say, exactly. How can China take over the world when most Chinese never have seen a salt mill nor know how to use one? And he writes me back, you mean the cooker? I'm not following. What's your point? My point is this. This woman, who's a pretty sophisticated woman from China, whose father was like a mayor or almost a mayor of a big medium-sized town in China, married an American, moved to the U.S., has a pretty good business. And when I gave her the salt mill, the top of the salt mill is where you put the rock salt in there. And if you turn it upside down, it's possible that it could open and all the rocks will come out. So I give her the salt mill thinking that she knows how to use it. And she goes like this. I say, no, turn it around the other way. And she goes like this. Here's the bottom of the mill. And she goes like this. And I'm like, no. And then her husband says, and you could hear in his voice, give it to me, I'll do it. Kind of frustrated, kind of embarrassed. He grabs it and goes three twists of it. Now it was set to a very fine mill grade, so not that much would have come out. And you could see the frustration between them. You could hear it in the voice, and I wasn't really looking, but I could hear it. He was embarrassed that she didn't know how to use a salt mill. And she was embarrassed because she didn't know how to use a salt mill. So he does 3 times and he says, more. And she says in Chinese, which means yes, I guess. He says, 3 more times, and now he raises his voice and says, "You want more?" And she says, "Boom!" And he says, 3 more times, and then she says, picks it up, and she says, "Good, now you eat it," and drops it in front of him. Of course, my man, stirs it around with some chopsticks, tastes it, and he's like, "That's not so bad if you mix it up. It's not too salty." And she left. She left my house, went to a neighbor, called a taxi, and went back to the hotel. China going to take over the world? Folks, I'm not really trying to pick on them because there's a lot of sophisticated people in China. It's an ancient culture. It's 5,000 years old. They invented a lot of stuff, silk, the compass, gunpowder. I'm not hating on them. But I'm just saying, when you got 1 billion people, not all of them are going to be smart. Not all of them are going to know how to use a salt mill. And if you can't use a salt mill, you can't take over the world. I'm sorry. This has been Holy Joe Rock and Roll coming at you live and unscripted. I hope you read that article on The Economist. And all you preppers who are afraid of a China overtake and they own us, it's all bullshit. Okay? Let's get a clue. Let's relax. Live life. Holy Joe Rock and Roll. Peace out.